Kannan. And we're going to talk about fallow land in Arakud, and specifically in the valley that contains Banglapadigai and the surrounding villages. So these villages are part of the Irla community, and the Irlas historically have been a hunter-gathering community. But over the 20th and 21st century, there's been a shift to an agricultural basis, where there's been millet cultivation, and later a shift to coffee and pepper and crops like that. In even more recent times, we see that there's a growing presence of fallow land in these communities. So we asked the following questions in our research. We asked, how much fallow is there? Why is the land fallow? And how are the reasons for fallow related to each other? So first, we have to define what we mean by fallow land. There are two kinds of fallow land that we could be talking about. The first involves a kind of cyclical fallow, which is where land is left fallow for around 4 years in between millet cultivation, as part of a shifting cultivation pattern. The other kind of fallow that we're thinking about is fallow in which the people have stopped doing agriculture on that land due to a problem or a variety of problems. So we went to 8 villages in this valley, including Samigodo, Babikare, Vakanamaran, Sakapadigai, Kokod, Pongimoke, Mudir, and Banglapadigai. And in total, these villages have 114 households, but we spoke to 67 of these households. We had time constraints and other factors, such as elephants roaming around. So based on our data that we collected through a household survey, we determined the percentages of cultivated and fallow land in each village. So we have this data for Banglapadigai, Samigodo, Kokod, Pongimoke, Sakapadigai, and Vakanamaran. We left out Babikare and Mudir because we didn't speak to enough households in those villages. So we see that the percentages are telling us that fallow land is shown in the brown and cultivated is the green. And we see that in almost all the villages there is over 50% fallow land. Vakanamaran is the exception. There is 41% fallow and 59% cultivated. We also made a map of the locations of fallow land on revenue title land, that's the Pata land. And this is based on information that Keystone provided to us, GIS information. So this is showing all the fallow land on Pata land in relation to each of the villages, Banglapadigai, Pongimoke, Vakanamaran, Sakapadigai, Kokod, and Samigodo. So in order to contextualize the issue of fallow land, we also felt we needed to understand how the land is being used. What's the land use strategy? So there are 4 categories of land use that we see on the agricultural landscape. There is permanent crop cultivation, which involves coffee, pepper, silver oak, silk cotton, a number of other crops, fruits. There's annual crop cultivation, which involves millet, vegetables, pulses. There's a mix of both. So we had respondents who would have a parcel of land that involved both coffee and annual crops like vegetables. And the 4th category is fallow land. Out of the cultivated land, we see that the permanent far outweighs the annual. Much more of the agricultural landscape is taken up by permanent cropping than annual cropping. So in our conversations with the community, we also saw, they also gave us a context of historical change that as they perceived it. So we made this diagram showing how the changes have happened over time. And We don't have specific time periods, but this is how the story was told to us. The story was that in the beginning, the village was spread out on the landscape, and there was millet cultivation. People were living in their fields and watching the fields, cultivating, and the animals, the elephant, stayed in the forest because the people were able to watch their fields. Then, what happened? A government housing scheme was introduced, and houses began to cluster in one place. Millet cultivation stopped, and coffee increased as coffee subsidies came in from the government. Fallows also increased as millet cultivation reduced, and elephants began coming in closer. Then in the third depiction, now we see that people are leaving the village. They're leaving for wage opportunities, they're leaving for education. The fallow has increased even more as people leave. There's a lack of labor to do agriculture. And there's the introduction of the PDS, the ration shop, which you'll hear more about in the diversity presentation. And that creates a reliance on capital to purchase food rather than growing their own food. Vegetable cultivation is also introduced as people begin to realize that vegetable cultivation is very profitable. So that is another addition that comes in this final stage. So we ask the question now, why is land fallow? So the community gives us a number of reasons. They describe to us that there's a lack of labor. They need capital. There's water shortage. Maintenance is too much work. Monsoon change. The monsoon is coming later in the year. It's becoming unpredictable. People don't know when it's going to rain. There's no unity in the community. People feel they need unity to do agriculture. They don't have it. Access to the land. Access is hindered by the terrain, by the undergrowth that has come up from no maintenance. And the elephant. The elephant comes up as a huge, huge response. It's huge in people's minds. You know, it's at the tip of their tongue when they tell us, when we ask the question, what is wrong with your land? The elephant is there. So then we decided to ask 27 people to describe and rank the problems that they're facing. So this graph is showing all 27 people told us that the elephant was a problem. 9 people told us capital was a problem. 8 people said lack of labor was a problem. 8 said water. And access and monsoon change had 2 people each. So then we took the top 4 responded problems and we looked at it another way. We said, so the people ranked these problems on a scale of 1 to 3, with 3 being the highest in terms of intensity. So how intense is the problem? And we found that out of elephant, capital, labor, and water, 75 to 80% of all respondents for those particular problems told us that it was of the highest intensity. So from that we see that the elephant, like I said, is really at the forefront of people's minds. It's what is the kind of first explanation, or the biggest explanation in people's minds for why the land is fallow. But we thought about that and we felt it must be a little more complicated than that. So we decided to map out how the elephant-fallow land relationship is linked to a number of other things. Elephant is causing fallow land. Fallow land, as there's more fallow land, people are leaving to do wage labor. And as people leave to do wage labor, there's no people to do agriculture. The labor for agriculture is reducing. As people aren't doing agriculture, there's no community unity. No community unity, coffee cultivation is increasing. Coffee cultivation is a kind of agriculture that does not require a group of people. It's a very individual pursuit. With coffee cultivation, denser settlements, as I described, the housing schemes, the growing coffee cultivation, and a market for coffee. Back to lack of agricultural labor, there's no maintenance. The cover for the elephant is increasing. The elephant starts to come closer to the community. People become afraid of the elephant. As there's a lack of labor, millet cultivation reduces as well. People start to think that they'll do short-term vegetable agriculture because it's profitable. So then from there, it creates a need for water. Vegetables require a lot of water. And that creates a need for more capital for things like pipelines, pumps. And that takes us back to wage labor. People are going to wage labor to have capital for all these things. Millet cultivation reducing is also creating more fallow land. Again, the elephant comes nearer when there's more fallow. So it takes us back to this issue. We also sensed that there was a relationship between, a three-part relationship between community unity, millet cultivation, and the elephant. Millet cultivation is, millets, I guess millets are something that have very deep cultural significance in these communities. They're used in rituals and burials, at festival time. There's a lot of meaning behind millet. Beyond that, millet cultivation is a community activity traditionally. People would work together in the field to cultivate millet. So, when we asked people about these two things, they said they cannot do millet cultivation without unity, and they cannot have unity without millet cultivation. When the community has no unity, they say that they cannot keep the elephant away. That's what was happening in the past. They said they had unity because they were all in the field together, and they kept the elephant out. Now, they're not in the field. The elephant is coming in. When the elephant comes in, it's deterring people from doing millet cultivation. It's all working in a cycle. So we also asked the question to the community, what do you need for cultivation? What do you need to convert your fallow land to cultivated land? And one of the biggest responses that we got was that they need fencing. They need to keep out the animals, the elephant. So we thought this was interesting. We thought we would go and look at an example of fenced land that we do have now. So we did a GPS survey of the fenced land in Banglapadigai. This fence, it's an electric fence. It was put in by Keystone about a year ago. And so we wanted to see what the current land use was after 1 year. We see that now there are 2 patches of annual cultivation going on, right here in the green. There are 2 patches of newly cleared land here in the brown. And there are these are rough locations of where there is coffee cultivation happening, but it's mixed in with fallow growth. So all of this white here is indicating where there's fallow. So this fence, this example leaves us with a question of why, when the elephant threat is removed, when the animal threat is removed, despite that being what is indicated to us as the biggest problem, why is there still so much fallow? And in bringing our project to a close, we end with questions like that. We don't have answers for the situation of fallow land. What we do have is an understanding of the variety of reasons and problems and the interconnections between all of them. And there is no singular explanation or reason for fallow land, and we see that in this example. So the next question to ask is, how can we begin to address multiple factors without singling out what is perceived to be the biggest problem. Thank you.
I have a question. In your first diagram, when you mentioned that people grew millets and they lived in their lands, and thereby they managed to guard the wild animals like elephants to come. And that was the unity. There would be a time when the land would be fallow. It's unlike a coffee crop. It does not stay on the field throughout years. A coffee crop is a permanent plant. So during that fallow period, what did they do? How did they manage the guarding or the unity process? To be able to find out what happened then during those fallow periods and what's not happening now because of the fallow periods. Because the fallows have been historically there have been periods of fallow.
Right. Yeah, and that's the first kind of fallow that I was talking about. I would actually turn to money or time to see the response to that.
இந்த படத்தில் பார்த்தீங்கன்னா தென்னை விவசாயம் இருக்கு. அவங்க இடத்துலயே வந்து காவலுக்காக சாலை வீடு கட்டிட்டு இருந்திருக்காங்க. தென்னைக்காடு சுற்றி காடுகள் இருக்கு. ஸோ இவங்க எல்லாமே தென்னைக்காடு போட்டதுனால அவங்க ஒருத்தருக்கு ஒருத்தர் யானை வருதுன்னா ஒருத்தருக்கு ஒருத்தர் பார்த்து யானை வருதுன்னா அது உள்ளே வர விடாமல் தடுத்திருந்தாங்க. அதனால தான் யானை வந்து காட்டுக்குள்ளே.
இதில் கேட்குற கேள்வி வந்து தென்னை விவசாயம் 6 மாசத்துல வீட்டுக்கு வந்துடும். மிச்சம் 6 மாசம் வந்து பூமி ஃபாலோவாக இருந்திருக்கும் முதல் படத்தில் கூட. அப்போ யானையை எப்படி எடுத்துக்கணும்?
ஸோ யானை உள்ளே வருந்தா இப்போ தென்னை விவசாயம்னா கண்டிப்பாக யானை உள்ளே வரும். ஆனால் அவங்களுக்கு ஏதாவது ஒரு சேதம் இருந்தாலும் அவங்களுக்கு ஒரு பிரச்சனையாக எடுத்துக்க முடியும். ஸோ காரியங்கள்னால அவங்களுக்கு ஒரு பிரச்சனையே தெரியல. தென்னை இருக்கிறதுனால விவசாயம் பண்ணுறது ஏதாவது சேதம் வந்தால் மட்டும்தான் அவங்களுக்கு ஒரு பிரச்சனையே தெரியும்.
So you just said that the people did not mind if the elephants came into the fallows because there would be no crop damage and they would just come in and go out. Any other questions?
So, if that's what you're saying that because even for us, I think we use data as an indicator of how these organizations, these factors may be affecting people's perception. So if you say that where there was no damage, that there was no problem with the elephants coming close, so what do you think has changed? This is again based on your interaction. What has changed between then and now? When there are still very few damages to property itself, but more in terms of injury and loss of life. So, where has that shift come about in your state?
Yeah, I mean that's tough to answer in terms of exactly when that's happening or what is happening exactly. But you're right, we do see a shift. My sense is that there's a shift a lot more from worrying about the property, the cultivation, to worry about personal safety. There's a deep psychosocial anxiety around the elephant that we find in these communities, particularly in Banglapadigai, which unfortunately has had some deaths from elephants in recent times. So we see that that's something that's very, very present now in the community. That fear of the elephant to personal safety.
So just to follow up, so would every other reason to not cultivate, would that be stemming out of this anxiety itself, or do you think this anxiety aids those reservations themselves?
I think the anxiety I suppose anxiety could influence other concerns. So, you know, if you're afraid of the elephant, but you're also worried about capital and access, you know, the elephant could be influencing those two things because you're saying, you know, I don't want to go to the field. You know, this problem becomes larger because you're saying I have to walk all the way to the field and the elephants are there. And capital is larger because I suppose you could say, you know, even if I get capital, you know, what am I going to do? The elephant is there. So it could be influencing other explanations, but I also think that there's separate explanations going on. I think capital is you know, a problem. Capital and water, water especially is a problem for a very particular thing, which is vegetable cultivation, because they need so much water for the crop, and we're seeing problems with water shortage being connected to monsoon change. People tell us that the water issue has become so much bigger now because the monsoon is changing. So.
This is relative, right?
No, this is coffee.
Okay, so here's where you mentioned that people are moving on
Yeah.
for capital.
Yeah.
Here, what I want to understand is between this and this time frame, has there been a reduction in population usage, which has caused the encroachment here? So, yeah, so, no, of this land.
Of the fallows.
So, did a result of people moving out here itself cause fallow land and elephants coming in? That's what I want. Because here you've stated they moved out, but did it start here? Was there like initial
migration in this situation?
Yeah. That's my question.
You guys have a thought on that?
See, again, this is also a domain where we need to have more historical and scientific investigation. Because we are not taking into consideration how the coffee plantations started, right? And whatever the Iblas recall are only from those days,
Yeah.
not earlier. So I think it's very big area. So, we cannot really go. Especially about that.
And you know, historically, at least historically, this is that our 2 decades of work here, we started our work in Banglapadigai. One of the major issues that we faced in the beginning was the community was doing millet cultivation, and they were fighting a large estate close by, and they wanted to make this transition from millet cultivation to a coffee cultivation. The estate people did not see them as a threat when they did the millet cultivation, because that was something seasonal. But the moment they started planting coffee, and we helped them to start planting coffee, and there was a litigation. We had to go to the courts against the estate, and then the public prosecutor sent a very stiff kind of a letter to them, and they kind of went down. But that movement was important because coffee gave them that humidity. And now the narrative is changing. So we need to kind of look at that.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
I think my point of view is that in olden days, there are more people involved to make millet cultivation, because not only in the village, people from neighboring village also come and do the millet cultivation. And I also heard that when elephant or some other animal comes, they use the traditional music to chase away the elephant. I heard that.
No crackers and sticks.
Not crackers, but traditional music, they go some far and they just chase away.
So I think she said the neighboring villages used to come and go and
Support.
maybe because the elephants are blocking access for people from the neighboring villages to those communities, there can be a reduction in labor also.
But no, what I'm saying is that the elephant is seasonal. It's not like staying there and make difficulties for the millet cultivators. But now it's like staying there. It's difficult for them to do the cultivation of water.
This point in Franciscan America. The labor was one of the issues. Laborers used to come and work in this, so you would get a lot of labor force also to work.
Stephen had a question.
Quick question. Did I understand from yesterday's conversation, or perhaps it was the day before, that the Banglapadigai folks had mentioned that they feel comfortable securing wage labor, and I think they mentioned 500 rupees a day, and they were comfortable with this, and they didn't see a need for an alternative livelihood strategy. And if true, then what is the justification for arguing that they should return to agriculture?
So we did receive responses from people in Banglapadigai that actually told us that they're not getting enough wage labor. So the supply of wage labor is not, that high. There's no surplus. And many people were also telling us that they felt, that a return to or vegetable cultivation, introducing more vegetable cultivation can be a huge factor in gaining more capital because it's so profitable. So people in Sanagoto this year were particularly excited about cultivating Maracai, which is, I don't know if it has an English name, but that's the name of the vegetable. And when we were speaking to them, I think like 5 out of the 12 households were growing this crop, and the remaining households were saying that we want to start doing it as well. So it's like a trend that's catching on, and it seems like the thinking behind it is that we can profit really well from these vegetables.
Okay, I have a quick question. Do they at any level, revere the elephant? Or how has that perception changed over time?
Yes, I would have thought so, that there would be something like that, some sense conveyed to us. There were a couple of responses, so I suppose that was present. People were saying we should respect the elephant. But my sense is that it must be changing because the majority are feeling very, very afraid. Or maybe that reverence for the elephant is getting outweighed by the fear of the threat to safety. So.
Lena has a question, and then maybe.
What percentage of land we think would be?
This is resort just next to the Banglapadigai village, which is called the Art Fortress. Now, there are people coming from outside in the cities to watch wildlife, and they move out, and the resort people may occupy these places to see wildlife watching.
Yeah.
Could that happen?
It could. Something like that came up in our village meeting on Sunday, where people were expressing the concern that outsiders are coming into our village, and eventually they're just going to take all our land. So, and maybe combined with the trend of out-migration that could be a scenario.
Just sorry to jump in. What I heard was that they would choose to sell their land, not that the land would be taken.
Right, but
There's a difference. They had some agency, they felt, and it was mentioned in, anyway, just to clarify.
Right, yeah.
I think in Banglapadigai, people, okay.
அந்த அங்கே இருக்க மக்கள் வந்து இப்போ வந்து அந்த வேலைக்கு போகிறாங்க டெய்லி வேலை கொடுக்குறதுனால அந்த வேலைக்கு போயிட்டு இருக்காங்க
ஊர்லேருந்து போகிறாங்க
ஊர்லேருந்து போகிறாங்க இப்போ எதுக்கு நாம விவசாயி இல்லை எங்களுக்கு வந்து அங்கே போனால் தான் காசு சம்பளம் கிடைக்கும் காசு கிடைக்குது காசு கிடைக்கி அங்கே போகலாம்.
So the state also happens to be the source of the village. No,
Fear about human safety is very present, very, very present. And it extends beyond Banglapadigai, it's in other villages as well. So,
how does the community react to an event like this? Because once someone from the community is attacked, there could be instances of survival instinct kicking in the community where they want to go about killing the elephant or driving it away. Has there been reports like that?
so when an incident like that happens, one person told us from Banglapadigai that they will have a village meeting and they'll discuss and they'll probably put some money together for the family of the victim. But other than that, it doesn't seem like anything else comes out of that kind of discussion.
See, the way they have tried to perceive, right, what is progress, like Steve said, wages. And then they themselves would be prepared to sell the land. The way they perceive. Even it's very evident in the name of the area, right? Banglapadigai is not the name, right? Bangla because there was the Howkel estate, Bangla was there. Padigai is always a fallow land. And what is the original name? Yeah, there is some original name, they've just forgotten. They identify the place as Banglapadigai. Bangla is not there. So the original Howkel estate Bangla now changed into resort. So, and coupled with that, what is these observations, wages count, and the way they are prepared to sell their land also. So,
the key point we just see over here is that it is fallow by choice. Even when you say you want to sell the land or you keep it fallow by choice. And that choice seems to stem from one of the things which you said is the need for more capital. Now, once upon a time, there is X amount of resources there, and there is a certain population, and you can live off the land, and you are happy with that, and you probably live in a hut like that to now, the need for more means capital. Is it simply because the population has increased and the resources not enough? But in that case, you would use up all fallow land to cultivate, and it could be a cash crop. But you raise the capital off the land, and you still live off the land. But my perception from whatever I've seen is that the need to acquire things which they see, which come around them, in their environment. Like say, like I've heard that most of them got a smartphone.
Yes.
Okay, this sort of thing, that's
Yeah,
the extreme example.
Yeah.
So, this is a question which we need to address. That, that is it happening only because of the resource and it's not enough? Why is it not enough? And you have to go to other means to raise it.
Yeah. Part of it is, I think the question is, how are the values changing in the community? And the values, there seems to be a shift in values towards, money, and I think that's a pretty well-established shift across the board in several communities. And there are outside influences, more outside influences coming in. These communities have changed so much in such a short time. They all have TVs in their homes. There's all sorts of things going on. And so, yeah, I think you're making a very valid point is that, we can't only understand it in terms of resource constraints, but we also have to understand, how are the social values changing in the community.
So, we'll take the rest of the questions over, Keith. Thank you.
Thank you.